Hello, my name is Isabel Allen. I'm the project forester for Wakatoan, and I'll be walking you through this presentation about high conservation values as an installment in the Introduction to Forest Management Planning and FSC certification series. This presentation is geared specifically towards Indigenous communities with the goal of raising the bar on understanding rights and to have values included in forest management planning. Today we'll be going over what are HCVs, or high conservation values, how are they applied on the forest, and why should communities get involved. During this presentation, I would like to invite you, the viewer, to think about the values that you and your community have in the forest and contemplate how to best organize and represent those values. So what are high conservation values, or HCVs, and why do they matter? An HCV is considered by the Forest Stewardship Council, or FSC, as a biological, ecological, social, or cultural value of outstanding significance or critical importance at the regional, national, or global scale. HCV reports are written for forests to provide evidence that the FSC, Forest Stewardship Council, standard has been met. For context, FSC is an international multi-stakeholder organization established in 1993 that promotes responsible management of the world's forests with a market-based certification program. There are 10 principles in the FSC Boreal Standard that are covered in our other presentations, specifically the Intro to FSC presentation, which can be found on the Wakatoan website, and I recommend you check it out if you haven't already. So with the FSC standard in mind, we'll dig further into what high conservation values are. There are 6 categories of HCVs. The first is significant concentrations of biodiversity values, such as endemism, endangered species, and refugia. 2 is significant large landscape level forests in the management unit, where viable populations of most, if not all, naturally occurring species exist in natural patterns of distribution and abundance. 3 is forest areas that contain rare, threatened, or endangered ecosystems. 4 are forest areas that provide basic services of nature in critical situations, such as watershed protection or erosion control. 5, forest areas fundamental to meeting basic needs of local communities, such as subsistence and health. And 6, forest areas critical to local communities' traditional cultural identities, such as areas of cultural, ecological, economic, or religious significance, identified in cooperation with such local communities. Here I'd like to point out that all Indigenous cultural values can be designated HCVs. For example, some designated values have been cemeteries, old villages, spiritual sites, pictographs, archaeological sites, fur trading post, traditional gathering sites of traditional plants and berries, traditional habitation sites, hunting camps, old mines, logging camps and sawmills, portages, and traditional fishing areas. This list is by no means all-inclusive and can be developed through engagement between local communities and forest managers. Since there's such a wide variety of types of values, there are different measures that can be taken to protect them. Without the additional voluntary requirements of FSC certification, the regular forest management plan process, which is governed by the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry, or the MNRF, uses areas of concern, or AOC, prescriptions to protect values or specific features of a forest. The following examples are AOC prescriptions that are on the Magpie Forest. The scale of an HCV is dependent on the extent and significance of the value. In this example, the hatched lines represent an archaeological potential area, which follows the stream through this harvest block. The red buffer around the stream is a 50-meter area of concern prescription that was built into the forest management plan to protect the value. Any water crossings that are proposed to be built through this area must undergo an assessment by an archaeologist before any construction can occur. Another example is nests of culturally or ecologically significant species. This image shows the center buffer around the nest that was left as a reserve during the harvest, as well as a larger outer buffer that delineates a modified harvest, where a timing restriction was applied during the bird's critical breeding period. Values can be protected either as no harvest reserves or as modified harvest areas with specific restrictions. In conclusion, there can be value to certifying a forest, especially for the affected Indigenous people. The certification process can foster the relationship between Indigenous communities and the forest industry, including direct agreements. Developing HCVs can protect natural resource features, land uses, and other values dependent on forests. Ongoing communication is a critical component to the effectiveness of HCVs and FSC certification, as values are dynamic and there can always be more to learn. Thank you for listening. Hopefully this presentation helped you get a better understanding of high conservation values and how they can be addressed by affected Indigenous communities. If you'd like to learn more about HCVs, you can check out the FSC website at the top link here. You can also visit the FSC portal on the Wakatoan website for more learning materials and webinar recordings. And finally, if you're interested in becoming a member of the FSC International and the Aboriginal Chamber of FSC Canada, follow the bottom link below and fill out the application. Miigwech.